Rubikon me Adriatik Kelmendin përkrahet nga Birra Peja, Interex, Mobilje Karagach dhe Cima Construction.
Si është njërin ndër shtetet me aleate të Kosovës marrëveshjen e Washingtonit? Çka pritet nga Kosova dhe nga Serbia në realizimin e kësaj? Po ashtu do të flasim edhe për gjendjen politike në Kosovë, për situatën e Covidit, akuzat ndaj liderëve të shtetit dhe shumë çështje që kanë të bëjnë edhe me marrëdhëniet e Kosovës me Mbretërinë e Bashkuar. Në një intervistë të parën që nga marrja e detyrës në Kosovë të ambasadorit të Mbretërisë së Bashkuar në Prishtinë, zotit Nicholas Abbott. Your Excellency, welcome to Rubikon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
A pleasure. So you arrived actually this time of year last year. It was really dynamic year. How you were doing so far?
Well, I think I'm doing very well. As I describe it, it's really been a year of two halves, a bit like a football match. Obviously, the pre-COVID element which was a very busy period. We had the royal visit of the Countess of Wessex. We had the weekend of the Kosovo-England football match, which I think will always remain a very special memory. That was a very special weekend and a very special welcome from people here. And then obviously we had the period of government formation over December, January, but then to be shortly followed by COVID-19 in March. And I think ever since then, we've all been very much reacting to a situation and trying to understand the impact of COVID-19, not just in terms of the health crisis, but also on wider work and wider life in general.
And what's your evaluation? How did Kosovo do so far in terms of COVID?
Well, I think as with all governments, we're all thinking and feeling our way through this crisis. We're all trying to understand exactly how the virus impacts both in terms of our healthcare systems, and that's clearly been a priority, but also in terms of the restrictions that it's possible to use in terms of social lives, in terms of the economy. And that's a challenge. I think that's a very real challenge. You know, as you may have seen in the United Kingdom, we introduced new restrictions yesterday. That will have an impact on people's lives and the economy, on businesses. And it's the same in Kosovo. So I think at the moment, Kosovo needs to be prepared. You know, we've come out of a wave of cases. The numbers have come down. But as we're seeing in the rest of Europe, clearly they can go up again as well.
And what will be the things that Kosovo should take into consideration? Because in Kosovo, actually, we can describe maybe two waves. It started going up, going down, going up again. Now it's going down. But compared to UK, as you said, you are seeing a second wave. So what are the lessons that need to be learned?
Well, I think there's a credible argument to say that Kosovo has only gone through one wave. And we saw that over the summer, if you look at the number of cases, which really got very high. So I would say the issues now are, well, not to relax too much, to ensure that you're putting in place enough preparation in terms of your healthcare system. It's clearly necessary as well to ensure that your healthcare staff are themselves getting a bit of a break. I mean, I think the stress and strains on healthcare staff have really been something we don't understand. You know, those of us who are outside of it. But I think every time I see the hours that they've had to work, the pressures that have been on them, just the stress of a virus that none of us really understand, you can only sympathise. Whether that's the NHS in the UK, whether that's the healthcare system here. So we're actually finalising a programme with the United Nations, value of about €2 million, which is really to look at resilience within the healthcare system and also within the education system, because it seems to me those are the two areas that have been most immediately impacted by COVID-19. And I very much hope that will help at least in some way to tackle this very difficult issue.
And Mr. Ambassador, while we're doing this interview, it's roughly 20 days after the signing of the agreement, as they call it, economic agreement at the White House. So different opinions, how it was done, should we go after the political agreement, is the economy that's going to bring together people in Kosovo and Serbia. So UK greeted the agreement, and after 20 days, what's your assessment?
Well, I think what you're seeing now is a real commitment to implementation. I think you're seeing, obviously with the visit by Mr. Grinnell and the delegation, is clearly enthusiasm from the United States to push forward on these commitments. And I very much hope that we'll see, as we are doing, the Kosovan government responding to that. Normalization with Serbia is going to require progress both on economics and on politics. You can't really separate the two. Whether they can be done in parallel, whether there is some kind of link between the two, that's a bit of a debate, really. And it's something that you can debate along, in all sorts of ways. But in reality, there needs to be progress. There is progress, whether that's through the commitments that were signed up to in Washington, or whether the continuation of the dialogue facilitated by the European Union. All of that is positive. And I think, there is sometimes a desire to believe that one or the other is the way forward. The honest answer is both are.
And what to expect in this upcoming year? There was a point there saying that there should be a one-year moratorium on Kosovo not applying to international organizations, also Serbia not to work towards de-recognizing of Kosovo as a state. But there are two questions remaining. What do we want to achieve during this year, and what when this deadline expires? To expect for Serbia to recognize Kosovo, or what?
I'm not sure that the link is as automatic as that. I think what you have is a period of time where what was a very difficult issue for Kosovo is put on hold. The United Kingdom has been very clear that it supports Kosovo as independent and as sovereign, and we have certainly supported Kosovan efforts for recognition, but also to protect against non-recognition. So I don't think that as an issue that's still going to be there, but in terms of the immediate negotiation through this next year, I very much hope that we'll see those issues set aside and an opportunity to concentrate on some other very important issues as well. It's not going to be easy, but progress is possible. A lot, of course, depends on politics here. And I think there is a need within the coalition government, but also more broadly within Kosovo at a political but also at a public level to really think about and discuss what kind of agreements, what kind of normalization Kosovo wants with Serbia.
This is not clear what Kosovo different parties want? Well,
I think as we see fairly regularly in the media, there's clearly a debate that is ongoing as to what the priorities are and where an agreement can come out. It's something that is not going to be easy. Any agreement is going to need some compromise by both sides, and understanding what compromises are possible is also important.
What about compromises? Are there any compromises left for Kosovo to do? Because looking back to Ahtisaari plan, from Kosovo perspective, there was a lot of compromise that has been already done. What is there more to give in order for Serbia to recognize Kosovo and to open its way to be part of international organization, particularly UN?
Well, I think any agreement, any normalization with Serbia requires a lot of detail. And it requires understanding the reality of the things that you are agreeing. A lot of this, as you say, has been set out before in previous agreements, in previous rounds of the dialogue, and of all the processes of negotiation that you mentioned. But it's also about now and the immediate, and what people believe is going to be required on both sides. Now, as we've seen in the past, there has been a big discussion around territorial exchanges. The United Kingdom does not believe that territorial exchanges are good for Kosovo or good for the region.
And you still
we still stick to that. Absolutely.
That.
They would have a destabilizing effect. But they're still, but it's still clearly possible within the negotiation that one side might propose that. We're very careful. We're very concerned if that came up. I don't think it will at the moment. I think the current government has been very clear about its position.
And it's a dangerous scenario, you're saying?
I think it is undoubtedly destabilizing. The region as a whole needs a period of stability. We believe Kosovo is a multi-ethnic country and should be so. We think there is great strength in that. We certainly believe it for ourselves. But of course, to get to that and to get there, you are going to need a comprehensive agreement on normalization. I find it very hard to believe that any such agreement should not include recognition of Kosovo by Serbia.
And when do you think should be some kind of deadline? Until when should even international community wait for Serbia to do that step? Because I'm talking with the UK ambassador. UK was among the first countries that recognized Kosovo as a new state. You have been part of EU. So 28 out of 28, 24 members, 23 members recognize Kosovo as an independent state. Serbia wants to join EU. So when will that time come when you say enough is enough, but this is the new reality?
Yeah, I think that's very unlikely. I think you have to step back a little bit from the immediacy of normalization between Kosovo and Serbia. The commitment to the Western Balkans as a region from the UK or from the EU is not going to go away. I think there isn't going to be that moment when everybody says, well, enough is enough. In some ways, the Western Balkans, and I would include Kosovo, are integrated into the politics of the European Union and the United Kingdom. Obviously, people ask me whether or not us leaving the European Union somehow changes the way in which we see Kosovo.
And I don't think a lot of concern here because of you leaving EU.
Well, I can understand that people feel that they're losing a voice within the European Union that is very much supporting Kosovo. I can understand that. But I think in what I'm seeing, particularly from London at the moment, where we are, in terms of Brexit and leaving the European Union, looking again at what our priorities are. Throughout all those processes, all I'm seeing is the underlining of the importance the Western Balkans plays for the United Kingdom. The issue of normalization between Kosovo and Serbia is one of those priorities. In very practical terms, I have access to more money for more projects and more programs in Kosovo. As you may know, we've now merged the Foreign and Commonwealth Office and the Department for International Development. I think that's of real benefit to me as an ambassador here, as it is to my colleagues in the other countries.
So basically what you're saying is that the collaboration, the relationship is increasing going forward.
Yes, I think, obviously as an ambassador, you tend to always want more, I would like to be able to send more soldiers from the KSF to train at Sandhurst. I would like to send more people with Chevening scholarships to the UK. You always want more. But I think also what's happening is we are changing our view of the Western Balkans. As I say, now I'm hoping to have access to more development expertise. And I think that gives us an opportunity to be part of conversations that perhaps we weren't part of before. And that brings us back again to COVID-19 and the kind of socio-economic impact that it's having. We're never going to have the resources that the United States or the European Union have, but I do believe we can be an engaged and clever partner for Kosovo.
And should EU, even though that you're not in EU anymore, make clear to Serbia that they need to recognize Kosovo first in order to join the EU?
I think that's already part of the agreement. My understanding is that that's the way things are in any case. So
because every country that joins EU needs to know where their borders are, who their neighbors are.
Yeah, but I think that's something of a given.
And Serbia understands that?
You'd have to ask. I'm the ambassador to Kosovo.
And going back to Kosovo and your time here, so you witnessed 3 prime ministers changing in a year. So how do you see this dynamic of Kosovo politics? Is it healthy, or sometimes it's hard to keep the track with the agendas and everything that Kosovo needs to achieve and to do?
Well, it's certainly dynamic, that's for sure. And it is a kind of natural dynamism within politics in Kosovo. That's a good thing. In terms of democratic credentials, it only shows how people are interested in politics, want to be involved in politics, and have a wide and diverse range of views. It becomes more difficult, I think, when you're talking about the efficiency of government. That's a different issue. And clearly you need some stability. And you need an ability to be able to make change happen. Government is not just about keeping the status quo, it's also about bringing in changes.
Are we seeing changes being done?
I think at the moment we're seeing, as understandably, since the start of this health crisis, we're seeing people reacting to a situation and trying to find the best way forward. We've seen the government put forward a whole series of plans for how to tackle several of these issues, but at the same time, they don't appear to have the strength and support in the Assembly to make a lot of it, to progress a lot of that. So that's a difficult situation to be in. I think we have to wait and see over the next few months how issues develop and where that takes us.
And one of the issues that has been discussed as bringing the situation to have the change of the government was the pressure from the dialogue with Serbia. So first we know the resignation of Ramush Haradinaj. He was invited from the special chambers, but also one of the reasons was that he was insisting on keeping the tariffs, and he said it publicly. So the second was with Albin Kurti and the pressure that was being done from other political parties, but also from international factors to engage more in dialogue with Serbia. And now we see also the issue with these last agreement. So how can we have stable institutions that will need to deal with these hot topics, as you mentioned, to make few compromises towards Serbia in order to normalize relations?
Well, I think we're in a better place now than we were. I think what we've got now is a situation where a process has started, and we very much support the EU in that facilitated dialogue. That progress should continue, I very much hope. At the same time, you've clearly got engagement from the United States. And as I said earlier on, I think those are complementary. There is no competition there. Are
they complementary, or do you see collaboration between DC and Brussels?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. And I think the UK, if in the position we're now in, is something of a bridge between the two. I think we've got a good opportunity now to make progress. Clearly there are other events on the horizon, an election in the United States that will affect, could affect progress. But if you look at the fundamentals, and I think that's important, we talk about Kosovo having a Euro-Atlantic orientation, and that's the truth of it. And because of that, effectively, there isn't a competition between the United States or the European Union or the United Kingdom as to, how best to do this in order to make the real progress. We all know the direction we're pointing in, and I think we're all trying to work to make progress in that direction. We have an opportunity at the moment, and I hope that will continue.
And going back to the agreement, to the points of the agreement, a lot of debate coming these days about the Limani Lake, Gazivoda Lake, and you've seen that. So Vetvendosia and PDK at some extent are saying that this is a way for Serbia to be melting inside of Kosovo. So is this how we can see at the issue?
I mean, I think if you look at the position the government's taken, it understands that these issues are sensitive, sensitive both within Kosovo, sensitive within their own coalition government, and I think they understand that. Clearly, we need to see how that develops. The United States have proposed a feasibility study. Let's see what that says. And of course, there's a sensitivity because touching on the lake touches on the territorial issues again. But let's see what the feasibility study says first. I don't think we should kind of jump to a conclusion before that's done.
And also one of the concerns of the opposition and some other parties in Kosovo is this issue about what they call Balkan minischengen. So it's based on the principle of free trade and economy, but the question mark is how can we be all equal in terms when Serbia still does not recognize Kosovo as a state. So how far can we go? What can be the difficulties?
I mean, my answer will be that you've probably encapsulated all the issues in that question. I think that all of that's out there. Clearly, there was an initial reluctance from Kosovo to be involved. There's now a decision and a commitment to do so. The government here will need to look at how it takes that forward. There are lots of issues, but I think anything that is going to improve the situation for both, not the economy in general, because at the end of the day, we talk about the economy and a lot of these other rather theoretical words. There is a need for employment in Kosovo. There is the need for employment so that people can lead good lives, that they have access to healthcare, they have access to education, and all of that, I think we would naturally say needs integration in the region. How you do that at a time when you are trying to bring about political agreement with a neighbor to normalize the relationship with Serbia isn't necessarily going to be easy, but it must be worth doing.
And one other issue that is also interlinked with mini-Schengen and equality among the member states has to do also with EU and Brussels. We are the only country in Europe that still doesn't have Schengen regime applied. So even as we know we complied with all the criteria that was there, all the conditions. So this can also be an obstacle because other countries will be in one step ahead of people of Kosovo.
No, and I understand the frustration. I can understand the frustration that people feel. We have quite a large Kosovan diaspora in the United Kingdom. They would like to see their family and friends being able to visit. I'm sure they would also like the opportunity for work. I think that, in terms of the European Union, there is a conversation to be had with the members of the European Union. I think it's probably one that's best done bilaterally. I think there's sometimes an assumption that all of this can be solved by the European Commission. That's clearly not the case. And several of the European Union members have concerns about the issues that we know of, rule of law, corruption, nepotism. So there is action that the Kosovan government needs to take as well.
But these were the criteria that also other countries in the region had, and they are enjoying free Schengen. Sure. And it sometimes seems as double standard towards Kosovo, because you have to be looked upon many times in the same issue because certain governments do not trust you in the end. And compared to also international indexes, Kosovo is today better than some of the countries that are enjoying visa-free movement like 10 years ago.
So I would suggest that those are the points that this government needs to be putting to some of its, I would say, partners in the European Union to look at how to take those issues forward and what it is that those partners are looking to see if Kosovo is going to be admitted into Schengen.
One other also very discussed issue is the recognition from Israel and the agreement to move or to build, to establish a Kosovo embassy in Jerusalem.
Yes.
So how do you see this?
Well, the United Kingdom clearly believes that the status of Jerusalem is dependent really on a negotiation between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. That has been going on for some time, and as you will understand, these things can take time. Our expectation is that the status of Jerusalem will need to be agreed by both sides, and we would expect it to be a capital for both sides. Currently, the British Embassy is based in Tel Aviv, and we have no intentions of moving it.
And is it a rushed step for Kosovo to establish an embassy in Jerusalem?
Well, because of that negotiation that is still going on, I think our advice would be to take your time over that. I wouldn't be encouraging Kosovo to put its embassy into Jerusalem yet. I'm sure that isn't our position. But at the end of the day, the recognition from Israel is very good. It's both assuring, I think, to show that Israel is ready to do that. It's a good opportunity for Kosovo to build a relationship in a different part of the world. And also, as we saw with the Rosh Hashanah celebration last week, I think it means a lot to Kosovo's Jewish community. And that's of real value. And
also it's part of the points of the agreement. So
again, so these are
it's not a menu anymore.
No, these are commitments that the Kosovan government has made.
Also, we talked about the changes in the government and institutions of Kosovo, but this autumn we can expect some more changes. Depends on what's going on with the special court. As we all know, and indictments for Kosovo President Thaci and former Speaker of the Parliament Veseli have been announced. They are yet to be confirmed, but it is expected to have an epilogue during the month at the last, it should be October. So if this is the case, then Kosovo President said that he is going to resign from his post, and this will set Kosovo again in the situation to have an agreement or to have a president to be voted from this assembly or to go to elections. But this is also linked with maybe changes and reshuffling of the Houthi government. So do you have an advice? If one happens, what should there be or what to expect? Or
well, I think what you're describing, of course, is just the situation of uncertainty that we're living in part again because of broader issues. I think it's also fair to say that at the moment it is speculation about the indictments. I think this is a question of if, not of when, and so until it is to happen, I think we need to be careful about how we look at the issue. But the president has been very clear.
We have from the prosecutor's office that there are indictments, but they need to be confirmed by the judge.
Well, my understanding is that they have presented a case to the judge, An actual indictment actually has to come from the judge. So yes. as of now, there are proposed indictments. Those are they're not factual.
You look at them as proposed indictments?
Yes, because they have to be confirmed by the judge. And until they are, then we have to wait and see. And so I think the President has been very clear about his position and has done so, clearly and sincerely with the public of Kosovo. And of course, there will be an impact. But Kosovo clearly has a constitution that's able to cope with these situations. And if anything, I think, has shown a resilience that some might be surprised at. It seems to me the political system is actually very resilient in Kosovo. If you look back over the last 20 years, it's been thrown a lot of challenges, but it still seems to come through, and in a way that allows the system to continue with international support.
And also, it was quite unprecedented how these two proposed indictments were given to the public. So it was the first time that there is a press statement by the prosecutor's office saying that they made proposals for the indictments for the head of state and president of one of the biggest parties in Kosovo, saying that they are suspected of killing around 100 people. And this was seen as pressure towards Kosovo leaders. And was this normal, the way they handled the issue?
I mean, I'm no legal professional, so I couldn't tell you whether it was normal or not. It certainly came as a surprise to everybody. And in some ways, we've been responding to that ever since. But again, I repeat, these indictments have not yet happened. Let's see if they are. And then I'm fairly confident that the system here can cope with that. And it may mean certain changes, but even then I have the impression that the resilience of the system is able enough to cope with it.
And until we see if these indictments, proposed indictments, would be confirmed or not, you are continuing your relationship with President of Kosovo and Mr. Veseli the normal way, as you always did?
Yes, I mean, clearly I engage with as many people as I can here in Kosovo. It's important to do so.
And also with the President?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say,
nothing changed?
Nothing, no. I mean, nothing has changed at all in terms of that.
Mm-hmm. And how do you see the work of special chambers? We are seeing another episode these days with these documents that are being handed to veterans organizations, and the narrative that they are doing in public, that this talks about this susceptibility of the court, their goals that based on them are against Kosovo.
I mean, it's a serious issue. The breach of legal confidentiality that this represents is serious, and you'll have seen the statement that the Quint put out last week. I mean, I think for all of the Quint embassies, this is a serious issue that needs to be handled seriously by the authorities here, by the KSC and the SPO themselves, but also with the support of the legal processes of Kosovo and the legal authorities. It certainly looks as if this is an attempt to discredit the court. We don't want that to happen. We don't think that should happen.
Do you think this is organized internally? Well,
it must be organized by somebody, because otherwise I don't know who will be delivering the documents. But there must be an issue around what impact this has. That's for the KSC and the SPO to decide and to communicate. I think there was another press release this morning or yesterday from them. So they're aware of the issues, and they need to be dealt with seriously and properly. I mean, whether or not that is affecting the processes they're going through, I don't know. But I would very much hope that the mission of the KSC needs to be respected. It's part of the commitments that Kosovo has made around rule of law, and for the international community, it's important that that's delivered.
Another issue is that you have signed a memorandum of understanding with Prime Minister Hoti for the recruitment project. How is it going so far?
It's going quite well. I mean, obviously, it's still early days in terms of a variety of the processes and the recruitments that are going on. This is very important for us. I mean, I think when we look at it ourselves, this has been a program that is of key importance. The issue of meritocratic appointment is a very important one. Not just, I think, in terms of ensuring that the right people get the right job, but there is a bigger impact around the efficiency of the government and the ability of the government to deliver what the people want. You want to have the most able people, whatever their background, whatever the relationships they may have. You want to ensure that they are going to deliver at a senior level for Kosovo as a whole.
And have we seen so far that the right people are given the jobs that they need or they should? Because this is not the first memorandum of understanding that you are having, and not only with this government.
No, that's true. I mean, effectively, we need to renew it every time because that's the way things work. And I'm not going to name names of individuals who we think are the successes or the successful examples, but we are pleased with the way it's going. We want it to continue, and it is one of those areas that if I could, I would increase our involvement. There are a number of sectors that the government would like us to be involved in terms of this program, and if we can ensure the financing from London, then we will do so.
And we mentioned, Mr. Ambassador, earlier, Chevening program being one of the benefitors. I always need to ask, this will continue, but how many new scholarship can we expect this year? So
you've probably seen, I did a reception last week for the group who are going to the UK for this academic year. We've 11 people who are going, and I'm very much hoping that next year we can get more than that to go.
So it's a record number.
It is a record 11. Number, but record numbers are only meant to be broken.
Oh, okay.
So if we can break the record every year while I'm here, that will be a major success. I say this very regularly. I can only be impressed by our Chevening scholars. And that is, I get no credit from that. It's really from them. The people I have met here who are Chevening scholars have come back to Kosovo, have invested in Kosovo. They are professional, committed, serious, but they are also a great group to get together and get to know because they represent a breadth of Kosovo. They come from all communities, men and women, involved in all sorts of sectors within the community here. So it's always a pleasure when we get together.
And Mr. Ambassador, it was a pleasure having you on my show. So thank you very much.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Cheers. Very good.